Those interested in the history of communism have heard of Joseph Stalin's bank robberies, but a few paragraphs on a webpage or a footnote in a history book don't bring it to life, nor the details that Stalin tried to bury. This was Stalin's infamous Tiflis Bank Robbery, with the added details minute by minute. On Wednesday, June 26, 1907, from a tip-off from a sympathizer inside the state bank, Stalin and his criminal operation know that the state bank will deliver the equivalent of $6 million in the mid-2020s to the new state bank on Yerevan Square, also known as Erivansky Square. With his spectacular, the largest robbery his gang ever committed, Joseph Stalin will finance the Bolsheviks for years to come in one operation. 9 to 10 a.m. Stalin's outfit of 20 or so brigands begin to take up their positions in and around Yerevan Square, the most important square in the city. 28-year-old Joseph Stalin is the head of the operation. His exact whereabouts on the day, as intended, are hard to pin down. Although the biggest city in the Caucasus at the time, Tiflis is a small town. Stalin lives just 2 minutes away on one of the streets just behind the square and just behind the military headquarters. The religious seminary he attended as a teenager is on the other side of the square from the state bank. 10:20. The growing morning crowds milling around or passing through the square see a cavalryman on horseback, 25 years old and sporting a long mustache, one of the many police and cavalrymen positioned up and down the route that the state bank's armed stagecoach will take as it transfers hundreds of thousands of rubles. He is the man coordinating the robbery on the ground, Stalin's childhood friend Simon Ashkarki Petrosyan, known as Kamo. Bachua Kupriashvili, along with others, has taken guard at one of the square's restaurants, preventing people from leaving. Others wait inside the neighboring Tilipachuri tavern for their signal. The two teenage girls who helped smuggle the grenades for the operation into Tiflis, Patsia Goldava and Aneta Sulakvelidze, stroll around with their fashionable parasols and loaded revolvers inside their frilly skirts. So far, they are performing their part well, flirtatiously distracting some of the stationed Cossacks and Russian officers. 10:25. Stalin is most likely in the Tiflis train station and has been for some time, receiving updates from messengers passing on periodic updates. Accounts will place him either in the square, on a nearby balcony, or in a local cafe, but as his biographer Simon Montefiore claims, it's unlikely because he usually wouldn't be too close for security reasons and will flee the city within a few moments if his messengers bring bad news. 10:28. Lookouts positioned down the route the state bank's armed stagecoach will take observe its arrival. Patsia turns the corner to the Pushkin Gardens and waves her newspaper, and those further down nod and gesture. The brigands inside the Tilipachuri tavern load their pistols and take up their positions at strategic points around the square. One to take out each policeman on the square, others to guard key areas, and two to take out the Cossacks stationed outside the city hall. 10:29. The disguised cavalry captain Kamo begins to threaten passers-by to clear space. Bachua Kupriashvili is peering over the newspaper he is pretending to read. As the stagecoach slows down and enters the busy square, they can see the two carriages. In front, the stagecoach driven by the state bank's cashier and accountant, along with two armed soldiers. Behind them is the security coach loaded with soldiers and policemen. 10:30. As they innocuously pass by, 4 grenades are rolled under the carriages, most likely by Bachua, Patsia and Aneta. There are 2 huge explosions as human and equine limbs erupt into the air. The underbellies of the horses are ripped open and their intestines spill out onto the square. Smoke, dust, and shrieks fill the air as the crowd start running and taking cover as panes of glass shatter and some bricks topple from buildings. Stalin's wife Kato watches what she can make out of the devastation from their home balcony just around the corner. 10:31. Guards around the square and the stagecoach's guards who were not killed or injured in the initial explosions try to fire back, but more shots and several more grenades rain down around the smoke-concealed carriage as the attackers rush upon it. The ground is now littered with dozens of injured and killed, both military and police, and citizens caught in crossfire. Amid those fleeing the carnage, 3 of the 20 or so conspirators also abscond. 10:32. But as the attackers start to board the coach, one horse, injured and driven mad, is still alive and attached to the coach and has its legs intact. Before they can board and grab the money bags from the rear of the carriage, it stands up and instinctively starts galloping off in the direction of the soldiers' bazaar, pulling the coach and rubles along with it. 10:33. As the horse reaches the other side of the square, Bachua, within distance and with arms to spare, lobs one more grenade under it. Too close to the target, the shockwave stuns him to the ground, but the horse explodes, immobilizing the carriage once more. One of the brigands closest to the carriage, Datiko Chipriashvili, jumps on top of the carriage and begins pulling out the hefty money bags, helped by Patsia. As they toss them to the ground, they are momentarily vulnerable. The bags are too heavy and too numerous to make off with on foot. On the other side of the square at the military headquarters, Cossacks, caught off guard, finally begin to mount horses and load rifles. 10:34 to 35. Captain Kamo, unseen for the last few moments, rides into the square driving another stagecoach. He circles round the square, firing his Mauser, before pulling up alongside the remains of the State Bank's carriage. Both he and one of the girls begin tossing the money sacks onto his phaeton before he turns the carriage around and heads out of the square. In their haste, 20,000 rubles are left in the carriage. 10:35 to 36. Just as he's left the square, a police phaeton approaches in the opposite direction, headed by the deputy police chief A.G. Balabansky. Balabansky sees the cavalry stagecoach coming towards him, but before he can speak, Kamo shouts to him, "The money is safe! Run to the square!" A few minutes later, when he reaches the square, Balabansky will realize that the cavalrymen had been in disguise, and his mistake is their final piece of luck. 10:37 to 10:40. Kamo rides into the safe house on Vitoria Gonchanaya Street, the yard of a joiner's shop adjacent to a house owned by the mother of one of Stalin's gang, a safe house where much of the robbery had been planned. Kamo removes the uniform and pours a bucket of water over his head. In the hours and days that follow, the banknotes are sewn into a mattress and transported to another safe house before it can be transported outside Georgia. 40 have been killed, to not mention the many more injured. One of the carriage drivers who survived is found with 9,500 rubles of the money the Bolsheviks left behind that he pocketed himself, hoping that it wouldn't be noticed. But some of the banknotes are marked, proving difficult to launder. The mastermind, Stalin himself, along with his wife and child, will be out of Tiflis 2 days later.